My grandpa spent 5 years and 18 days on Earth before Grandma came to Earth. Then it took another 20 years to meet, both born in Ohio, somehow not meeting until Florida. But after meeting the love of his life and spending 58 years together, when Grandma went to be with Jesus, Grandpa could only bear 78 days apart. With heavy, aching hearts, we are back here again. That kind of pure, strong love is exactly what comes to mind when I think of my grandparents. When I honored my grandmother back in August, it was easy to share all the things we did together, the girly things like crafting, cooking, art, and sewing. We had a lot in common and the bond was simple. But for Grandpa, this is attempting to describe a love that you feel by being in their presence, by the little things I watched him do. As a little girl, I always felt protected by Grandpa in his shiny red car zooming around, playing outside while he battled all the spider webs for me, eating Cheerios with Grandma while Grandpa had toast. Honey Nut Cheerios is still my favorite cereal, and every time I smell Cheerios and toast, I'm instantly brought back to summers with my grandparents. As I got older, started having children, I took a new appreciation for my grandparents. I looked into my new daughter's eyes, and I felt a type of love that would forever be unconditional. Grandma would always tell me I was a little piece of their heart, and I now understood what that meant. To have someone love you like that is very special. Everyone shows love differently. Supposedly, I'm the verbose one of the family. Grandpa showed his love through his actions. When Grandma was first diagnosed with cancer, she said she knew that Grandpa loved her and was worried because for 56 years they ate dinner across from each other. Grandma cooked the food and Grandpa set the table. Grandpa started moving her place next to his side. In the final 2 years of their lives, they ate dinner next to each other. Every night at dinner, my grandparents took turns praying. They prayed over everyone, and they even prayed over things from the news. Grandpa's favorite joke when I would visit would be to forget who prayed last. He'd turn to Grandma and he would say, "It's your turn." He always smiled in my direction and chuckled. And when he smiled like that, his blue eyes would twinkle. I think that he just enjoyed listening to Grandma pray. When my grandma passed, my grandpa's first dinner prayer was very short. He said he was thankful for his loved ones, and he said to take care of his wife up there. Grandpa took over the nightly prayer every night that I was here in August. Being with his great-grandchildren is one of the things I remember really bringing out the best in Grandpa. I used to love sticking babies in his arms, and at first I thought this would make him uncomfortable, but instead he was a natural and his face would light up. He enjoyed watching all the great-grandchildren running around. He liked pointing out when something caught their interest and when they were being mischievous. Grandpa's favorite stage was the toddler stage. The two youngest great-grandchildren are Bryn, who is 1, and Nicholas, who is 2. Grandpa loved Bryn's little girl outfits and was always impressed by how sweet and good-tempered she is. He laughed that Nicholas was trouble, but man, he could use that energy. When my summer visits are over, I like to get up around 4 a.m. and start driving back home. Grandpa would get up with me, help me pack the car, check it over, say a prayer, and we would only hug about 5 times goodbye. The summer of 2016 was my favorite summer. After we spent my daughter's 6th birthday here and found out about the first Matheny great-grandbaby's arrival, my grandparents drove to South Carolina to help me move to Connecticut. My military husband was gone at the time, and I needed to move 1 cat, 2 dogs, 3 children, and a whole lot of house. I had tried to downsize before moving, but we just had our 3rd baby and had too much stuff. After taking apart the South Carolina house, and by we I mean that Grandpa did it, driving up to Connecticut, we realized we quickly needed more storage options. David and I didn't own many tools at the time, so my grandpa found a handsaw and went to work recreating closets and storage spaces upstairs and downstairs so that we could unpack. And after all of that, my grandpa still told me how impressed he was with me when I finished putting together one new little red entertainment center that came with instructions and still took me several hours to do. When it was time for them to go that year, I woke up early, just like they always did for me, and I cried the whole morning after they drove away. "You knew they had to go home eventually," my husband told me. I knew, but I just wanted them here with me. The last in-person goodbye I had with my grandpa was not an early morning pack-the-car visit. It was just the two of us on August 18th. He hugged me tighter than he ever has before and tearfully said goodbye. I called him every night after that, and this man who has always shown his love through his actions and never been one for words, he told me that he loved me every night. As if being loved by them wasn't enough, they always took such great pride in their loved ones. My grandparents constantly lifted my spirits by letting me know how proud they were of me, even if it was just for building one little red entertainment center. It used to catch me off guard when someone would respond to an introduction of me by saying, "Oh, your grandparents speak so highly of you." And now it brings a tear to my eyes. My grandparents are both people that I will spend the rest of my days speaking highly of. Another thing that my grandparents were very proud of and kept near their heart was their faith. May 19th, 1992 was the day that my grandpa accepted Christ. His other birthday, my grandma would say, for he was reborn. I may have only been 6, but even as a child I could see a change. He was lighter, more joyful, easy-tempered, more at peace, but that classic dry humor of his didn't go anywhere. This reminds me of a sermon from our associate pastor up in Connecticut. He was asked if it bothers him that people can accept Christ in their final moments and still go to heaven, despite a life they led on earth. It did bother him, but it bothered him because it meant that these people had to spend their whole lives on earth not knowing the peace, love, and joy a life through Christ provides. Both of my grandparents spent their last several decades in a life of peace, faith, love, and joy. And in doing so, both were such an amazing example for us all. As I can't stand up here forever pouring out love for family loss, even though I would try, I'd like to end this now with several words of advice that my grandma has written me over the years. Solomon knew life had its seasons, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance. We are in a time of weeping and mourning, but there are seasons ahead for laughing and dancing. We grieve for the departed, but we must place hope in our future. By faith, we make it through the storms of life. By faith, all things are possible. May the God of hope fill you with joy and peace. And this one is actually something that Grandpa wrote me in a card for my anniversary. May your love be forever. Love, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. I am once again reminded through my tears that no matter how much I tried, I could not keep my grandparents here. This season was their time to go home, and in a heavenly home they are together again. Thank you.
Got one more song that Juanita picked out. You'll go ahead and play